So Ian, the first thing I'd like to ask you is like, talk about your involvement specifically with Sonic Frontiers and what the process has been like so far for you.
It's a dream come true. I grew up a Sonic fan, so the fact that I get to contribute to the latest tentpole game that's the mountain peak, man. I've reached Sonic Nirvana. The team has been great to work with. They've been very patient with me in my moments of fanboyism. And I've learned a lot about the process, which has helped with other projects that I'm working on now. So the whole thing has just been a really great experience.
Sonic has a ton of history. I mean, dating back to the 90s, there have been multiple story arcs, spin-offs, graphic novels, other games. Like, how do you factor that into the story that you're writing, specifically with the tie-in to Frontiers?
Well, it's easy enough if you just narrow band focus on what is the story within the games. Because that's first and foremost. That's the foundation from which all other media springs from. And it allows you to say, okay, this happened in the games. We don't have to worry about some of the other stuff that has come about in the many, many years of Sonic media that there's been. Even still, that's like 20 plus games of story to go through. And I'm thankful that I've been able to make a career out of being a walking wiki of that kind of thing. So, and I get to apply it here. So that's nice.
When it comes, like, Sonic has a ton of allies and friends and enemies. Like, what basically inspires you, and what are you allowed to use, like, specifically for the Sonic Frontiers tie-in? Like, do you have like a kind of like an outline of what the game designers give you, or are you kind of like given free range? Like, talk about that process.
Iizuka-san and Kishimoto-san, when they approached me with the project, said, here is the general premise of the game and the story, and here are the characters that are going to appear. And I pitched, here and there, could we bring this one in? Would this make sense? It's like, no, this is what's been budgeted, this is what we're building around, here's where the focus needs to be. And it's like, great, okay, these are the ingredients I'm cooking with. What's the best story I can do with these characters in this scenario?
Is it tough? Because, like I said, Sonic has so many friends and allies, and everyone has their favorite. Is it tough when you have to leave one of them out of a story arc?
Oh, I'm absolutely terrified of the Cream the Rabbit fans coming at me. It's like, where is she? It's like, I understand. I really do. And I wish we could do something with that full ensemble cast, but that's nigh upon 30 characters, man. You can't have every star in the sky shine the same brightness. So everyone has their time and their place, and it's really nice that we have other media like the IDW comics where we can explore that extended cast, because we're coming out 12 times a month at least, and we're a much simpler production, so it makes sense that we can do more with that. Whereas a game like Frontiers is much bigger, it's much more complex. You need to have a more defined focus on who you're working with and where you're going.
You've written for a lot of other comics, Ninja Turtles, Archie. Like, is there a process you do specifically for Sonic to get your mind in the writing mode for his adventures?
It's an illness. I can't escape it. I'm always thinking Sonic stuff. That's one of the great things about Sonic, is that it's this wellspring of creative material. It's an evergreen franchise. Every time you wrap up something, there's always the question of, okay, that was cool, but what came next? The characters got to this point. That was great. What do they do now? Where do they go now? Wouldn't it be cool if this happened? We haven't seen this character in a while. What if they did this? And it's just endlessly feeding itself. It's both great because you never are at a loss for ideas, and it's also tiresome because it's like, I want to think of something else, please. Anything, grocery list, laundry, can we not be thinking Sonic for 1 minute? No? Okay, I'm writing down this story idea. Add it to the pile.
Is there any issues with, like, going back to the original question with, like, the timelines? Like, are you able to kind of, like, have your own segmented story that's unique to you and your vision while writing? Or do you have to adhere to, like, 12 years ago, Sonic was doing X, Y, Z, so he wouldn't do that now, or any kind of weird continuity issues? Like, everything has to be interconnected now with, like, a cinematic universe, it appears like. Is it the same way for the comic book world on your end?
There's a kind of understood looseness to it. They share elements and ideas and characters, and you don't want to do anything that steps on the toes of the main line, of course. Like, we're not going to set Dr. Eggman aflame and create our new main villain, and then the game say, here's Eggman again. That's just not simpatico. So there's a mutual respect and understanding of what is the franchise doing and how do we incorporate that and work alongside it.
From an outsider's perspective, what would you say is the biggest misconception of being a comic book writer in 2022?
Maybe it's the degree of creative control, because comics are a collaborative effort. And while the writer does direct a lot of the initial creative process, I guess, I liken it to drawing up the blueprints for a building. You know, that draft may be done by me, but it would be up to the plumbers and the architects and the electricians to actually put it together and render it into a competent building. Likewise, the art team, the line artists, the letterers, the colorists, the editors, can't forget about them, our friends in licensing, in Sonic's case, they all contribute to make sure that it's on brand, that it is a solid story, and that it actually becomes a comic. So it's a little disingenuous to say, oh, Ian Flynn did this in the comics, because I didn't do it alone. There are a lot of incredibly talented people involved at every step of the way that helps create the Sonic that you see.
Speaking of that, do you have to go through like an approval process if Sonic does something or says something or goes to a certain area? Do you have to like run that by like Sega's creators and work with their relationship? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, every step of production is overseen by our friends at Sega of America and Sega Japan through the licensing partner, through the licensing department. So the premise of a story has to be approved, the script has to be approved, each stage of artwork has to be approved, and that's, you know, with the editors making sure that it's a solid book, solid book in its own right, and with Sega to make sure that everything is on brand and it works with what they want Sonic to be overall.
And do you have a favorite Sonic game and why?
If we're talking classic, Sonic Mania Plus just barely ekes out Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Sonic 3 and Knuckles was the best until Mania, and even then it's a close race. Modern, it's a toss-up between Generations and Colors.
So when mine Sonic Adventure 2, I love that game so much. It has a really warm spot in my heart. Love that game. Can you talk about like your specific Sonic Frontiers comic? Talk about what's going on in the world and the story in the game with your comic specifically.
It is, you know, a prequel to the game itself. It is as canon as anything else. The challenge there is Frontiers was written, you know, with itself in mind, and then later on we had the idea of doing the additional content. It's like, okay, what story do you tell that doesn't step on the toes of Frontiers, that doesn't reveal any of the mysteries, that, you know, that contributes something without undercutting all the effort that's already been put in. And the team that was all involved, I think we came up with something that's fun, that serves as an introduction to things, but it also is not necessarily required reading. If you miss out on it, or if you only focus on the game, you're still going to get the full experience. But if you read the comic as well, you get some additional fun material to enjoy within the context of that game's story. Same goes for the animation that will be coming out not too long from now either.
And where can people read your comic? Like, when does it come out? Where can they purchase it? Is it available digitally?
The Sonic Frontiers Prelude comic is coming out on the social media channels.
And then, Ian, what's next for you? What does the future hold for you in general? It doesn't have to be Sonic related, but like, what are you working on next?
Oh, this is where I trot out my infamous hashtag knowing smile. I'm working on 2 other games right now. Well, I guess 3 at this point. 3 other video games at this point. There's a number of Sonic projects in the works that are some are what you would expect. Some are going to come out of left field, and they're fun and exciting in that regard. trying to get original projects of my own up and off the ground. I'm just busy.
Good to hear. Where can people follow you to keep up for all your updates? You have a Twitter, Facebook?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at IanFlynnBKC. My personal website is bumbleking.com. That's Bumble like the bee, king like the reigning monarch. And that's got my online portfolio, my web store where you can get signed comics and other merchandise options as well. And there's links to the Q&A podcast that I do called the Bumblecast, which has seen explosive growth and attention. So we are updating like 3 times a week and may have to expand.
Any pressure when writing for such an iconic character that has such a wide history?
Oh, immense. Especially with my longevity on the series, there is a certain degree of expectation that some folks are going to be bringing to it, and I am well aware of that, and I don't sleep much anymore.